Hey, good morning. If you're wondering about the impacts on tariffs and the relation to the price of liquor in the United States, this video is for you. I'm an importer of tequila from Mexico. I import vodka from France. I import other products from around the world, gin from India, etc., etc. There is a direct relationship now, and now more than ever with all this talk and on again, off again tariffs, what's the rate, what's this, that, and the other. I think this deserves a deeper dive. I put a short up earlier, just kind of introducing it specifically with Mexican products, and we'll talk about Mexican products because that's very important. You don't really have a choice if you want tequila. It's coming from Mexico. If you want champagne, real champagne, it's coming from France. If you want Scotch whiskey, it's coming from Scotland. So tariffs are always going to be relevant, and to what extent is always fluid, but it's always going to be relevant for what we have going on. So let's talk a little bit about all the different types of duties, tariffs, taxes, and things like that that impact imported products. So obviously there's a duty, there's a tariff, and there's an import tax. Those are potentially all subject to the game. For mezcal and tequila, those are exempt under the USMCA, which is the agreement that came out after NAFTA was revised. With regards to the EU and anything coming out of Europe, like champagne, wines from France that you want, those are going to be subject to a tariff. Those are going to get hit. And right now, I have a little cheat sheet, so don't judge me because this stuff is always fluid. So as of June of 2025, there's a 30% total tariff. Hate to say that. So that's an extra cost somewhere in the equation. So let's talk about what that equation is. So suppliers, importers, product in the United States. That ultimately is called in the United States, that's called the landed cost. What comprises the landed cost? Well, the actual cost of the product, the ocean freight to get it here, and any other duties, taxes, tariffs, fees, and such that's incurred to get it here. So, obviously, the actual product cost in and of itself is there. There is going to be a tax. Usually, for liquor, the import tax on liquor is about $2.20 per 750 milliliter bottle of 80 proof spirits. The actual tax is $13.70 per proof gallon. A proof gallon is 1 gallon of liquid at 50% alcohol by volume or 100 proof. Do the math to get down to whatever proof your product is that's coming in. There is something called the CBMA, the Craft Beverage Modernization Act, which does lower that $13 and change tax rate down to $2.70. So there is a nice little play there. But for purposes of this, let's talk about duties and tariffs. So the duty is going to be imposed at 30%. Let's just take that, for instance, the 30% out of Europe. What is that on? Because it's not that your $30 bottle of wine at the liquor store is now $9 more expensive. It's not technically how it works, because that's the retail price. And there's a lot of layers that get to that price before you get back to the core cost of what the tariff is based on. The tariff is going to be based upon the product cost in and of itself. So the supplier side cost. So, for instance, if something costs $10 per bottle, it would be $13 a bottle. Now, what does that mean in terms of getting to the price? A $10 bottle here could be $29.99 on the shelf. Once it becomes $13, it could be $34.99 on the shelf. So it's not a direct relation to 30% increase on the 30% retail price. It's not an increase there. It's just based upon the value of what's actually subject to the tariff and the actual core cost of when it's produced abroad and before it comes to the United States. So a lot of talk about who pays the tax and who pays the tariff, which is a tax. Let's just call it for what it is. Who pays that extra tariff, and does it get passed on to the consumer? Common sense will tell you that if you're buying something abroad and your intent is to sell it to the consumer in the United States, whatever it costs to get it here, you're going to roll it into the cost. It's part of your landed cost. It turns into cost of goods sold. It's going to get rolled into it. It's all this nonsense. From a cash flow perspective, I think we're getting hooked up in semantics. So in the import game, we have these things called Incoterms, which are a variety of terms based upon, the arrangement that you have with the supplier. Some of the more common ones that you may be aware of are like FOBs. If it's a freight on board from the port overseas or the delivered port in the United States. That just means, where does the U.S. importer take control of the property and responsibility for the cost, the liability of the cost. So, and then there's another term called DDP, destination duties paid, FOB origin, FOB destinations, CIF, cost insurance freight, carriage insurance and freight, all that stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that come into play. If it's typically, the importer is going to pick up the cost. So the importer is going to buy the product from the supplier, bring it to the United States, present it to customs, clear it, and as part of the customs process, it's going to pay the import taxes and any duties or fees associated. So that math there is going to be the actual supplier side cost plus all the fees to get it in the United States, and his landed cost is going to be inclusive of that. That's going to be marked up, rolled up, and moved onward and upward. If it's destination duty paid or something of that effect, the supplier, the overseas supplier, will present it and clear it with U.S. Customs and cover all those costs. It may have to work in tandem with the importer for the regulatory component. In liquor, it's the COLAs and things that the certificates of label approval, etc. But it's still going to be paid by the supplier, in which case that $10 bottle is not going to be $10. It's going to be $13 to the importer. So I think we're getting lost in semantics here, is who's going to pay what and is the cost going to be transferred over to the consumer. I believe in a majority of circumstances, the cost is eventually going to be transferred over to the consumer. Common sense, simple business. What does it cost for the product that I'm selling? Got to mark it up and get where I get my target margins. I can only tell you that for the brands that I own, that are subject to tax from the EU and also from, if we were subject to tariffs from EU and potentially some problems coming in from Mexico for our tequila, we made the decision to absorb that. We did not change our pricing up for a variety of reasons. I thought it was going to be short term, so I didn't want to go through the hassle of changing it just to change it back. I'd rather have consistency across that with all my distributors and retail partners. And that's the route we took. That's not a law. That's not a regular. It's a business practice. That's the route that I chose to go. Other people could do something different, but just know that that's the way the math flows here. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the options here. Well, obviously for like tequila and mezcal, you have to produce it in Mexico. It cannot be produced in the United States. It can be bottled in the United States under certain controlled scenarios, but still you have to get the liquid out of Mexico and subject to the tax anyway. For products out of France, like champagne, obviously it's made in Champagne. The wineries are there. It's gorged there. It's bottled there. It's everything there. So if you want those products, if you want real champagne, if you want your Dom Perignon, if you want your Veuve Clicquot, if you want your Laurent Perrier, that's coming out of France, people, and you're going to hit it if that's what you choose. And so I don't want to go down an argument of what tariffs are really for, a political ploy or whatnot. Tariffs are meant to level the playing field, generally speaking. Are they being used for something bigger, broader, to kind of get some more global agenda? Maybe. Beyond my pay grade. All I can tell you is they are relevant and they are real right now, so we have to figure out how we're going to work with it. Bottom line is, if you want tequila and mezcal, you're gonna, if it's subject to a duty, it's gonna get rolled in eventually. I hate to tell it to you, it's the way it is. Same thing with champagne, same thing with Scotch whiskey. Where I think you might see a little bit of interesting play is in like with Grupo Modelo with beer, Corona and Modelo beers. I think what you're gonna see is you're going to see potentially those beers maybe being made in the United States as opposed to across, down south of the border. Still under the same brand name. You can still have it made here in the United States under the same recipe formulation, just shift production here. You may see some of that, and that could be a way, and that fits in with the agenda of what the administration right now is looking to do, get more things made in the United States. It could work that way. We'll see what Grupo Modelo wants to do and see how they handle things of that nature. It's a possible play their way. You're not going to see that in tequila. You're not going to see that in champagne. I don't think Grey Goose is going to start making their vodka over in the United States. I know you're not going to see my vodka, Lucien vodka, made in the United States. You're not going to see my tequila, Blue Lava tequila, made in the United States. Unfortunately, that's just not it. Certain brands, like we're a smaller craft brand. We focus on authenticity. We're very relevant, very credible. We're very genuine to our roots back there. The bigger brands, they have a lot more on the line in terms of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of CapEx is tied to this. So they are going to do what they need to do. And if that means shifting production under the same brand name, so be it. I do think, though, flagship brands that are, French products like the champagnes, vodka from France, et cetera, I think you are kind of pigeonholed. You're going to have to keep things overseas to have that happen. So I think that's what's going to happen. What's the result of this? To be determined. I do think that you're going to see potentially a shift in some categories. I think there could be a shift in maybe the champagne space to some other brands, maybe not. The vodka space, I think it's already, I think Tito's, let's face it, Tito's is going to probably get a little bit of a surge out of this stuff. I think that's what's going to happen here with things like that. With tequila, not so much. I mean, if you want tequila, you're going to get tequila. There's no American tequila. I'm sorry. There's American-owned brands, but they're still produced in tequila. I live in Florida and Nevada, so we make it in Mexico. That's where it has to be made. So there's that. I do think there will be some type of a little bit of fluctuation in what's being consumed in the United States and in balance with the competitiveness based upon pricing. I think that's what's going to happen. So does that mean there are going to be canceled orders? No. For smaller brands, maybe. For bigger brands, not so much. But I do think there's going to be a little bit of a shifting of the playing field, and we're going to have to basically, be like Tom Brady out there. We're going to have to call a bunch of audibles and make changes on the fly and see what happens here. So that's my take on today in June of 2025 of how these tariffs, up and down, how they're impacting the space right now. So take for it what you will. If you have any questions, reach out. Happy to help anytime.